The EU slapped tariffs on Chinese electric cars. Some brands are paying 45% on top of the standard import duty. Others are paying zero. Same Chinese cars, same segment, completely different rules. And here on Voltshift, we are going to show you exactly who pays what, because this directly affects the price of every Chinese EV you are looking at right now. The difference between the most and least taxed brand on this list is 27,000 euros on a 50,000 euro car. EU tariffs on Chinese EVs explained. Which brands pay, which don't, and what it means for your wallet. Let's get into it. In October 2024, the EU imposed definitive tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. The official reason? Chinese government subsidies were giving their manufacturers an unfair cost advantage, allowing them to price cars below what any European manufacturer could match. The investigation started in 2023. Provisional tariffs hit in July 2024. The final rates landed in October, and they are applied on top of the existing 10% import duty that already applied to all cars shipped into the EU. So when you hear a tariff figure, add 10% to get the real total cost to the importer. That is the number that matters for buyers. Here is where it gets interesting. Not every brand was treated the same. The EU investigated individual manufacturers, and cooperation with that investigation turned out to be worth a lot of money. Let us go through the major brands from highest to lowest. MG, owned by SAIC Motor, 45.3% total. The single hardest hit brand in Europe. MG faces a 35.3% countervailing duty on top of the standard 10%. SAIC did not cooperate fully with the EU investigation, and they are paying for it. Despite this, MG sold over 300,000 vehicles across Europe in 2025, the volume leader among all Chinese brands on the continent. Their 7-year warranty and broad dealer network have kept buyers coming. But the tariff has narrowed their price advantage dramatically. XPeng and NIO, 30.7% total. Both brands fall into the cooperating but not fully category. XPeng is the most exposed here because it has the most aggressive volume ambitions in Europe. They have found a partial answer. We will come to that. Geely, 28.8% total. Geely owns Volvo, Polestar, and Lotus, all of which manufacture in Europe and are not affected by these tariffs. But Geely's own Chinese-made models heading to Europe face 28.8% total tariff. BYD, 27% total. BYD cooperated with the EU investigation and received a lower rate, 17% countervailing duty plus the 10% standard import. Total, 27%. Still significant. On a BYD seal at 44,000 euros, that is roughly 12,000 euros of tariff baked into the price. But BYD has a plan. More in a moment. Tesla, Shanghai-made, 17.8% total. Tesla is an American company making cars in China and shipping them to Europe. They fully cooperated with the EU investigation and received the lowest rate of any brand in the probe, 7.8% plus 10%. Total, 17.8%. Lower than BYD, lower than any Chinese-owned brand. It is a striking result that tells you exactly how much cooperation was worth in this process. The key insight: the tariff is not about where the brand comes from. It is about how much the EU believes the brand was subsidized by the Chinese government, and whether they cooperated with the investigation. SAIC did not cooperate. BYD did. The difference is 18 percentage points. Now, the brand's paying nothing. The tariff only applies to cars made in China. Manufacture inside the EU, you pay zero. 3 brands have already figured this out. First, the Leapmotor B05, built in Zaragoza, Spain, 0%. We covered this in the last video. Stellantis owns 21% of Leapmotor and assembles the B05 at their factory in Spain. EU-made, zero tariff, which is exactly why it can be priced at 26,900 euros while every brand shipping from China struggles to match that price. Second, XPeng G6 and G9, built in Graz, Austria, 0%. XPeng signed a deal with Magna Steyr, one of Europe's largest contract manufacturers, based in Graz, Austria. The G6 and G9 SUVs are now assembled there. Same engineering from China. European assembly, zero tariff. Xpeng faces 30.7% on its China-shipped cars. So the Austria deal is not just a loophole, it is a survival strategy. Third, BYD, Hungary factory, mass production fourth quarter 2026, 0%. BYD started trial production at their new plant in Szeged, Hungary, in January 2026. Full mass production is expected in the fourth quarter of 2026. The first model off the line is the Dolphin Surf. Once this plant reaches capacity, up to 300,000 vehicles per year, BYD will effectively eliminate its tariff exposure on EU-sold cars entirely. This is a €4 billion investment specifically designed to make the tariff irrelevant. EU manufacturing is not a workaround. It is the new competitive battlefield. Every major Chinese brand that wants to win in Europe long-term is building or partnering with a European factory. The tariff is accelerating exactly the industrial investment it was designed to prevent. If any of that surprised you, hit like right now. It helps Voltshift reach the buyers across Europe who need this information before they sign anything. And subscribe if you want one of these every week. Now, what does this mean for you as a buyer? 3 things every buyer needs to know about tariffs before they walk into a showroom. 1. The tariff is already in the price. Importers do not absorb the full tariff cost out of goodwill. It gets passed through partially or fully into the sticker price. When you see an MG4 at a certain price, part of what you are paying is a 45% import tax. When you see a Leapmotor B05 at €26,900, part of why it is that cheap is that zero tariff applies. The price difference you see between 2 similar Chinese EVs often tells you more about their tariff exposure than about their engineering cost. 2. Brands absorbing tariffs are under margin pressure, which creates risk. Some brands, particularly MG and BYD in the short term, have absorbed part of the tariff rather than passing it all to the buyer. That keeps the price competitive. But it squeezes margins. Squeezed margins mean less investment in dealer networks, after-sales service, and software development. For a buyer making a 5-year ownership decision, that is not an abstract concern. 3. The tariff picture could change in either direction. In January 2026, the European Commission published guidance on replacing tariffs with minimum import prices, a different mechanism that sets a floor price per model rather than a percentage duty. Negotiations between the EU and China are ongoing. BYD, Geely, and SAIC have all filed legal challenges at the EU Court of Justice. Proceedings expected to take 18 months. The tariff regime you see today may not be the one in place when you come to sell your car in 3 years. If you are comparing 2 similarly priced Chinese EVs and one is EU assembled while the other is China shipped, the EU assembled car is structurally more competitive. Its price is not relying on absorbed tariff costs that could squeeze the brand's European operations long-term. Here is what the tariff story actually tells you about where the European car market is going. The EU introduced these tariffs to protect European manufacturers and slow the Chinese advance. And in the short term, they did narrow the price gap, but they also triggered something unintended. They forced Chinese brands to build factories in Europe, to partner with European manufacturers, to create European jobs, European supply chains, and European engineering operations. Leapmotor builds in Spain. Xpeng builds in Austria. BYD builds in Hungary. CATL, the world's largest EV battery maker, has a €7.3 billion factory in Debrecen, Hungary, already supplying European car plants. The tariff was designed to keep Chinese cars out of Europe. Instead, it brought Chinese manufacturing into Europe. That is not a policy failure. That is an arms race, and it is just getting started. That is the EU tariff story. Now I have a genuine challenge for the comments. VW, Stellantis, Renault, BMW. Name one European brand that has a credible answer to what Chinese manufacturers are building in Europe right now. Not a press release. Not a concept car. A credible answer that is already in showrooms or confirmed for production in the next 12 months. Name one in the comments. I will read every answer and respond to the best ones this week. Next on Voltshift, we go inside BYD's full European strategy. The Hungary factory, the dealer expansion, the 1 megawatt charger coming to European motorways this year, and whether BYD can actually become a mainstream brand here within 3 years. That one goes up this week. Subscribe so you do not miss it. I will see you in the comments.